I remember Anna Halprin, one of her favorite dances was going to the grocery store. And she will call my grocery shopping dance.
We are the dreamers, the makers. We stand on top of equators. We are the limitless. We got the future, no papers. We are the innovators. We have the focus like lasers. You know we doing it big. Oh, this is major.
Greetings and welcome to this episode of the Compromised to Alchemized podcast. I've got this episode with Rosario Sammartino. Really excited about our conversation. I go into it on the podcast interview, but I took a workshop from her 8 years ago at the Tamalpa Institute, and that is in the Bay Area, San Rafael, and also Kentwood, where the acting studio is. And I'll say that we also go into great depth about talking about Anna Halprin, who is one of the ones who started that institute and who is lifelong mentor of Rosario Sammartino's before she passed away. So now Rosario is a registered somatic movement therapist and educator. She was born in Buenos Aires, and she has a lot of training, and you could say that she has clearly developed her own way, and that means that she took all of what she learned and made it customized to her own blend. But I will say she got a doctorate degree in depth psychology with an emphasis in somatic studies from Pacifica Graduate Institute in Santa Barbara. She definitely has a huge focus based on her dissertation on the significance of somatics and expressive arts with trauma and recovery. So she also has a master's degree in psychology, and I'll kind of say that she has some experience with Gestalt therapy and psychodynamic therapy, but really we talk a lot more about her Tamalpa Institute days. And so she's going to delve into how she navigates sessions, interactions, and as well teaching with all that she knows. So I believe you're all going to enjoy this so much. So tune in and prepare for what I would say is my first expert in the expressive arts to come on the podcast in her experience with the Tamalpa Institute, founded by Anna and her daughter Daria, one of her daughters Daria. She comes from this lineage, if you will, of some of the most known kind of experts in the field as well. So you're also going to notice, I want to mention it, you're also going to notice this music, which I'm so excited to bring into the mix. This track is called Major. Jessica Murphy is the one, LA Lyric House. She's phenomenal artist, singer-songwriter, and they do a lot more. Her bandmate have Lunalux, and this is a track that she is so amazingly allowed me to use. So check it out. There's a lot more to say about her music. There's a lot more to say about the kind of goals and missions of Lunalux. I mean, other than just an amazing vibe, I'll also say that this music had a lot to do with just two elements. We're talking about like the feminine voice and reclamation, but we're also going to talk about galactic pop. So anyways, I hope you enjoy the music and hope you enjoy this episode.
This is major.
Rosario, it's awesome. So good to be in this place of having our conversation, and I really enjoyed catching up with you. And I kind of go into this a little bit more, but after having a workshop where you and your husband led it nearly like 8 years ago, then reconnecting has been quite beautiful. So thanks for the reconnection, and then I can't wait to delve into our conversation.
Likewise, Neil.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you are so I'm here in Santa Barbara, and you're up in Portland.
Portland,
Yeah,
Oregon.
and I was sending you messages because I was very recently, just this last weekend, up very close to the Tamalpa Institute, which clearly is a dear place to you, and it has this
Yes.
history for me. And I, when our daughter was only 1, which now she's 9, there we were in a Airbnb so that we could have me attend the workshop, and I did the Tamalpa Experience workshop, and
Mhm.
it was just a whole new world for me. But at the
Yeah.
same time, it was very much like I was amongst my people, and I felt that instantly from you as a teacher, facilitator, and then with the others, students, dancers in the room. I will never forget that moment, and I know you've had moments like that with many people who have come to you. So um, I want to it's like I want to talk about so much with you because this is such a beautiful thing. So again, honored to have you, who was the first person I went to in the workshops at Tamalpa. And even though I had studied some of the life of Anna Halprin, and later I attended a workshop where she was there, you were the person who showed me the beauty and the essence of the Tamalpa
Mm.
experience. And so for that, I'm forever thankful. And yeah, I would love to dive in and just have you share. As you are, I'm going to call you my first expert on the expressive arts that I've interviewed on the podcast, and
Yeah.
somebody who navigates that with many years of experience and also personal cultivation. It's dear to my heart that we talk about on this podcast, going from compromise to alchemized, but the healing journey, and what does that look like? And so I
Mhm.
can't wait to have you open up this world for listeners, because it's such a robust world. So,
Yeah.
kind of any way you would love to start off telling us more about expressive arts, and then you with your journey, I would love.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, thank you, Neil. As you were talking about it, also, I was brought back to that moment 8 years ago,
Mhm.
living in the Bay Area and
Mhm.
the Mountain Home Studio, which is, the home of Tamalpa. It was the home of Anna Halprin. That's such a special place. And thinking about my own journey, right, into this work. That's, as you can hear from my accent, I'm not from here, from Portland. I'm
Mhm.
kind of a Portlander now, but I'm Argentinian.
Mhm.
So my journey, and which also relates to what expressive arts started, when I was in my early 20s, and I was studying psychology. I was studying to become a licensed psychologist. And in the first practice that I started to do, it was in a hospital working with people were diagnosed with schizophrenia. And I would always say that it was almost out of desperation on not, wanted to bring to this group of men that I was working with. Some of them were living in the hospital for more than 10 years. I wanted to bring joy. I wanted to bring some vitality. I wanted to, to support this group of men that I was working with to feel more alive and more connected. And I was trying all these techniques that I've learned at school. And again, out of not knowing what else to do, I started to bring the arts.
Mhm.
And I started to bring drawing and music and singing and theater because that was something that I loved, right? I was always involved in the arts that I knew made me happy and made me alive. So it was in this exploration, and we had so much fun. We were singing tangos, we were drawing and sharing stories. And it was for me in that moment in which I realized that if I wanted to continue working, in the path of healing, it needed to be with the arts. Yeah, and so that set me into my journey into studying first art therapy, that in Argentina in that time there wasn't anything like that. So I studied in Europe, and then I ended coming to the United States to work with Dr. Natalie Rogers, who's was the daughter of Carl Rogers.
Oh, wow.
And that led me into Tamalpa.
Wow.
Just like one thing that which I wasn't looking for. I was just, a young, passionate artist and therapist, just in a way looking for ways to feel myself more alive, right? And that's how I landed in Tamalpa almost 20 years ago.
Wow.
And
How did
yeah.
Nat, if you don't mind me, just because I
Mhm.
want, how did it, fascinating that you learned from Natalie,
Oh yeah.
Carl Rogers' daughter. I had no idea.
Yeah.
And I love hearing about this part because
Mhm.
the very simple explanation of this life art process, or the Tamalpa as psychology and expressive arts.
Yep.
Well, I knew that you've clearly had those journeys, but how did it go from your time studying with Natalie Rogers to Tamalpa? What was the in between there?
Yeah. So Natalie Rogers, what she did, she created this beautiful methodology that it's called creative connection. And it's, like in the expressive arts, right? Going from one art modality to the other one, and how each modality opens up, right?
Yeah.
Different parts of us. Like I'm drawing, I connect with my imagination, and then I'm writing, some poetry, and it connects, with a little bit more of reflecting and metaphor. And then I move and I connect more with feelings. So Natalie was inspired in the work, of her father's, but also she was a student of Anna Halprin long time ago.
Wow.
You know how this web of connections,
Yeah,
between all these amazing teachers. So Natalie studied with Anna, many years ago when she moved to the San Francisco Bay Area, and then inspired, with the work that she did with Anna and her own, practice. She was a beautiful visual artist and did sculpture, and the work with, her father. She developed her own methodology. And in the course with her, we studied the work of Anna and Daria Halprin.
Wow.
And I was always, I love all kinds of art modalities, but my main, would say love is dance and movement. So when I studied that in the training with Natalie, I knew I wanted to to connect more with my movement and with my body, because it was when I was connecting, and really listening to my body, where I was having this incredible insights and ways to connect with parts of me that I was noticing were a little bit asleep, or blocked. So in the movement, for me was like, wow, this seems to be what I need right now in my medicine. So that took me into continue my training at Tamalpa Institute.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that, the history of knowing how you got there, and then I I can't help but think of the way you were describing, even to describe the expressive arts for those who are tuning in, who are coming without that knowledge of what that is, and some have this place where that seems like, oh yeah, I've had that moment, or glimpses of that moment. And in my own personal practice, it's so hard in a moment to just be doing this poetry without then thinking, what does that emotion bring up? And all of a sudden I have to move to that emotion.
Yeah.
And then before we know it, we're in a swirl of beautiful unraveling and putting back together. So I really
Yeah.
liked how you described that, and yeah, that brought me back to um, just seeing how you led these experiences there, um, where not only your personal practice of this, but how you're very much like a conductor, like seeing people use their instrument of movement in a room. And there was something like, I don't know, 30 of us, I remember, in this room.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had the time on the studio outside on the beautiful. And um, as a mover, as a movement artist, as a dancer, I felt like I looked around and I'm like, I am with my people, and
Yeah.
I felt so known. And I know part of that was like my essence, but I know so much of that was you knowing how to hold space in such a really powerful way. And this was 8 years ago. So I look forward to the time I can, you know, spend time again in person. But
Thank you, Neil.
yeah.
You know what you said, I felt, right there, like at home, and how people were also allowing themselves to be there and to express in those ways. The way that I think about, expressive arts, and the way that we work at Tamalpa, right? And we think about this work is how the arts, right? I mean, as humans, we're all creative. We all have the capacity to be creative. So it's not about mastering a type of art. I'm a master and a great drawer, and I'm going to put this in the wall in a museum. I'm going to create this dance for the theater company that is this particular style. But it's thinking about art as a way to be able to communicate and express our imagination, our feelings, our sensations, right? So, um, movement and finding my own style, my own Rosario style, your own Neil style. It's not about copying me, doing what I'm doing. And then when we're drawing, connecting with texture, connecting with color, connecting with shape, right? When we write, letting metaphor, letting our imagination to express, because when we think about us as human beings, right? And I want to connect with my feelings, and I want to connect with my thinking mind, and I want to connect with parts of myself. Many times, that what I'm feeling, or that what I'm sensing, or the narrative that I'm connecting with, they're not easy to explain. And many times they don't have words, right? There's a deep feeling that I'm having that may have a gesture, that may want to be moved, or express out, right? Or it has a color that captures that experience, right? So the arts in this way becomes a way to not only connect with ourselves and the complexity of our experience, but also to give it voice, right? To share our stories. And in the connecting of it, not just like, okay, I'm feeling it here, but then I can move, I can feel it, I can be with it. And that is what supports, in my experience, to be able to digest, to metabolize, to integrate the experience, and to bring, talking about alchemy, to bring the beauty, of the arts that supports it sometimes in working with very heavy and difficult stuff, right? It's like this companion, the art, music, right? When my feelings and even the sadness can become a song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so good. It's I love that, and the feeling that I was getting from the alchemy part of what you were expressing is when it's very heavy, as you said, and when there's all this burden, and it's at times so severe. If somebody's going through something so severe,
Yeah.
whether in the the way that it's impairing them physically or emotionally, or the the gravity of what they're feeling in the moment. You just can see that they can't see anything else right now. It's hard for them to have hope. I think I love the way that the arts go where we cannot go with words, and
Hmm.
sometimes with just our pure thoughts, because they feel sometimes barren and alone, our words and our thoughts, whereas with even the singing through the grief or moving through that, all of a sudden we find that companion, as you said.
Yes.
I love the way you
Yes.
said that. The companion is, it's so much more than skill or technique or
Yeah.
a craft. Even
Yes.
that, it is like a
Hmm.
very powerful companion. I love that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you said it, it's much more than a technique because it's a way of learning to being in communication with ourselves and to be able to express in the world. Because in a way we think about art, but this is about finding different ways of of kind of becoming, I would say, multilingual, speaking in
Hmm.
different languages. I can sound, I can move, I can draw, right? I can create sculpture, I can dance. And that for me at the core, what awakens is more freedom.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna share it because it's like the good, just to, with you and all of the ways you've cultivated this, of course, across the many places. Um, Inevitably, I'm brought back to when my daughter was 3 months old. I think I came to you at Tamalpa 9 months later. I mean, she was almost one, if not one. And 3 months, we went to New York, and I was learning some fascial work, and it was just kind of a continuation of my journey there. Uh, and I remember I woke up and I have this moment before the workshop started of this fascial work, where I got up and I started unwinding my own fascia, and I followed one stretch to the other. And then I
Yeah.
had my own practice called spontaneous movement patterns, which later I called Move Into It. And that's what actually led me to look up.
Yeah.
On the Continuum website, I found Anna Halprin and I found Tamalpa, and then I ended up at your workshop. But I remember this moment where in New York, it was actually Pennsylvania before we get to New York. I was doing this unwinding and I felt this, and I thought, oh, I'm moving as I would an interpretive dance. However, I'm unlocking the fascia, then connecting and seeing and sensing and journaling, and that's my practice. But it just felt really poignant that it was right before this workshop. But
Yeah.
I saw and heard these words that said, you will help free people and help them find freedom through your
Mm.
movement practice, that I then taught, for years after that. But right away, when I had that moment and this epiphany, and it was just profound, I was struck by this. I went to a cafe and I looked and I saw people walk in the door, and I saw their movement, I saw their
Mm.
dance, and I saw somebody open the door, a kid run out, and everything slowed down a little bit. And I
Yeah.
saw the rhythm of their movements. And I thought, we are all movement artists in some way, expressing our lives. And how can we not capture that beauty or be aware of it?
Yeah.
So, and of course, I know I was in a bit of a moment there, but I still pan out and I look and I see, if we become more aware when we have the privilege to,
Yeah.
we become more aware of how poetic and how expressive we are, then I think you would, I feel like you would tell me this, Rosario. We then can tune into how much of life can be like this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because, even as you're speaking right now, a very, very, let's say mundane event, like someone entering, opening, and closing the door. What, in the way that you're speaking about it, you're capturing something else in life, right?
Hmm.
It's like this aesthetics, and in a way allowing yourself to to be touched, by experience. So when we're aware, right, when we pay attention, when, I'm looking out because I can see this beautiful garden that I have here, right? It's part of my environment. I am being moved and something else happens in me, right? And so when we enter this work and when we're, therapeutically, and we're connecting, not just, with our thinking mind, but all of a sudden I can pause and I can notice different parts of my body speaking to me, right? Or contraction, release, in tension, in shakiness, right? And I allowed myself to be a little bit with that, and that maybe move me into something else, and that may open up some imagery to me that then will connect me with what matters to me, what wants to be said. So, and the same when we're working with others, right? And you're saying, and in the world, what I'm able to see and connect with in my world. I remember Anna Halprin, one of her favorite dances was going to the grocery store. And she will call my grocery shopping dance, and she would love to watch people walking around, what were their dances, and she will pay attention, how she's picking up the fruit and the grocery, and so that kind of awareness or joy sometimes of life and making something super mundane. It's like, well, this could become a dance too.
Yeah.
Which
I
is,
love that.
yeah, which is fun.
Yeah, but so that's it's like the childlikeness, the playful, any age we are.
Yeah.
You tell me that I remember now reading that or seeing that somewhere, and all it makes me want to do now is go to the grocery store or be here, or it's just it's like the the greatest joy to slow down and I think give ourselves permission to contemplate like the profound, joy, beauty, inspiration of like any given moment. And I
Yeah.
think when I'm in my most like meditative states, or when I think the year before my daughter was born 9 years ago, and then we were soon at Tamalpa. And I share this a lot, so I don't want to go into this much. She was born with a tongue tie, and that really put me in headfirst to becoming to learning that work and becoming more experienced in how to help her with her oral restrictions and the body work she needed and the other things. Um, but the year before she was born, I would sometimes spend 15 minutes in movement in the morning, and I loved those worlds that I got into. Other mornings, I would get up at 4 and have 4 hours of movement from
Yeah.
4 to 8 a.m. Then she was born, and then of course it was about helping, making sure that
Yeah.
I held her. And but the I love, I think the practical of people can just go and look at things that would seem mundane and make that into a meditation and a movement practice like Anna. And then for me, I recognized I could do that, and I loved it. And then sometimes I will reflect back on that 4 hours or 3 or 2 or 1 hour where I spent time intentionally reveling in things. And I'd sort of built up this way of having that space. So then later, when I would do the 15 minutes or observation, I could reflect on this expansive time that I had had. So um, I think that some people, I've come across them, they've come to my workshops, and they're like, but how do you do that? I just can't do that, or I don't. And I'm like so inclined to say, it's not really anything that is there to do other than to stop and allow. But I know some people have reasons why it's hard for them to settle. You would be a great person to bring this up with
Yeah.
because of your expertise with psychology, but some people slow their minds and they don't feel safe. They don't feel
Mm-hmm.
like they can. So could you, I don't, I just thinking of this in the moment, would you
Yeah.
speak to that on how you help or guide people when those normal things of like slowing down and pausing, when they don't feel restful in that and they
Yeah.
can't settle in, how do you guide those?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, Neil. And I think it's so important to speak about that, right? Because here we are saying, this part of, yeah, it's great to feel in the body. I love to be in my body. You know, it's delicious to move. Now, for many people, for many of us, in moments of our lives, our home, doesn't feel safe. And that's the work that I have been very interested in for the past, let's say 15 years, which is a work with trauma. And as we know, when, in the aftermath of trauma, right, many times that very place of safety in the body, it either feels a lot, that I cannot be here anymore, or I don't feel anything, right? So in those cases, sometimes thinking about coming back to the body can feel very scary. What's going to happen to me? Now, as much as I move away from home, right, the more unsafe I feel. So it's this dilemma that happens in trauma, right, in which the returning home to the body and to feeling is very much, at the core of healing. But that needs to be done slowly. That needs to be done with building up first resources and noticing, where can I be in my body? Maybe even that place of, oh, I can feel the chair underneath me. That's it. Noticing that sensation, right? I'm beginning to recover that sense of safety. And then, slowly beginning to build up that reconnection with self. That's when the arts, in my experience, are such a great ally. I have a client, for example, with a severe history of trauma, which for this client it was very, very difficult to connect with their sensations, because in that moment it was feeling so much that, I'm leaving, I'm getting dissociated, I cannot be here anymore. So we will start sometimes with a drawing, right? Beginning to connect with feelings, and maybe there were colors. And that was something that my client could do. It was outside, right? The piece of paper was supporting me. I was, this client was expressing, and then slowly through that drawing, beginning to feel it in their bodies, right? Oh, now I can be here and I can feel my chair. Anytime this feels too much, I drop into my chair supporting, or I come back to that color that I drew, right? So the process of beginning to rebuild that sense of connection, yeah, recover that capacity to feel joy again in the body, uh, reinforcing, certain places of connection that was there before for me, and maybe I forgot, feel they're kind of lost somewhere. So bringing that back, with writing, with drawing, moving, speaking. Sometimes it may be too much for me to connect with what I'm feeling. What if I could be a character of a movie? Who would I be? How would this character feel? So beginning to use the imagination, right? And theater as a way to begin to reconnect with ourselves and our body. So it's very important that we start from where we are, right? And from there is that returning home. Make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. What a beautiful, weaving together of some pathways, even for those who, like, I know that what you just did was, you took something that is so significant, weighty, you could speak, and I know you shared with me a little bit, like, this is something clearly you've been traversing and navigating and learning, but also becoming, quite a resource. You've been a resource for many in this, and so that's so much. So you could say that there's a lot to say there, but I really felt it, and I feel that that's the analogy of coming home, to your body, coming home, and then it's just so easy for people who have this pain that they don't have the ability to go there. But I think just I so love that you can, help people with this, through your words and through this, but also I can't help but wonder, are you I know currently, are you, whether in one-to-one or groups, how how can people kind of learn from you more about
Yeah.
this and come in
So,
contact more with this?
yeah. So I have one-on-one clients that I see in my private practice. I also have group therapy. And then for training, I teach, we continue teaching now in the Tamalpa Institute, those who are interested in training this work. And also I have mentorship groups, for people that are already therapists or educators that want to learn more and just want to bring their practices. So a variety of ways in which I connect with people. Um, I think, sometimes one-on-one is important, but also working with groups is so rich because we know that part of our healing, big part of our healing, has to do with connecting, right? And with what we call, in the science of trauma, this social engagement, being able to connect with somebody else, being able to connect with me, with myself, being able to connect, in intimate relationships, but also in groups, which is for me amazing. So those are the ways right now in which I'm working.
Yeah, but beautiful.
Workshops. I'm about to travel to Barcelona next
Oh, wow.
Tuesday, that I'm going to be presenting at the ISMETA conference, that is the Somatic Movement Therapy Association. And I'm going to be teaching a workshop there and leading also a dance ritual for the community. Yeah.
Wow, these are places I sounds so rich. I mean, I just want to go to all these places now. And so it was bringing back my I was just recently in Chicago. We were talking about this, we were
Yeah.
communicating, but I was in Chicago. And I grew up in Illinois, but I really um felt so thankful to be in a city where I grew up, because I think before I delved into any of my career path, um, I was very in, I have a history of dance and theater, and this kind of time in life, I'm bringing more space into my world for more of that, and even in my workshops where I'm teaching airway and feeding therapists and healers about my floor of the mouth technique, I'm always involving some expressive arts in how I can help them unlock.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now I have plans to even more so involve that. So for me, it's like this. I think it's why we reconnected in one way, is because I could just feel this is time to go back to some roots that I have that are so deep, that have brought me everywhere I've come, but
Yeah.
that will be not just good for myself, but then we have three kids. My wife and I have three kids. They're 9, 7, and 5, and they all have their own beautiful expressions. And so I just think I'm so excited to have many more fulfilling moments where we can explore these elements together. So I can't help but think, oh, at some point I need to get my whole family, and I don't know, do a session with you as a group where we can move together as a family in our new season here in Santa
It's
Barbara. So
beautiful.
yeah,
What a great idea.
yeah, I would love
Yeah.
that.
Well,
Um,
and then you were saying, Neil, how, yeah, that you use the expressive arts, right? And I love that because what this this methodology in a way supports is the exploration and the integration of different levels or layers of self, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're teaching, a technique, right? And people are thinking about it, blah, 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 right? And then, they may just for a moment draw, something that's staying with you about that, and what is that telling you? So in a way, right, these different art modalities of creative ways of connecting with self helps us to make, in a way, the learning that we're having our own. I also teach in graduate school. I teach introduction to trauma and crisis interventions and somatic psychology. And I
Mm-hmm.
always use the expressive arts as a way to teach. That's my teaching methodology, So after, what's staying with you, maybe a drawing or a movement or a gesture, what is it saying? What is something that I'm taking with me from this session that I want to practice? What is a challenge that I'm having? How this connected to my own mythology and my own, life story. So, right, how, in a way, remembering as human beings our capacities, not just to use our rational mind, a way of understanding, but also our imaginal ways of knowing, our kinesthetic ways of knowing, which opens up so much more.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. So, there's two places I want to ask you about. One is, so I want to ask you back to the topic of alchemy a little bit more on
Mm-hmm.
like the way you view um, this arc of your life and what you've done. But maybe before that, I want to go back to you talking about Anna Halprin, and I just
Yeah.
remember coming across her work when I did, which was just 2017, I think, and I remember reading about um, her finding out she had this diagnosis of cancer, and she shared on idiokinesis and how she, kind of, uh, I've kind of defined this differently based on like what I remember at the time, but she moved according to images that she saw and inspiration,
Mm-hmm.
and through those, I think it was not only once but twice that she, you know, was able to come into a place of healing
Yeah.
and kind of defy and baffle the diagnosis. um, so I'll always remember that, that part of that sliver of her life, and just, and of course then later meeting her, we corresponded via email for a couple years, and then meeting her sometime, maybe it was a year after your workshop. And of course at that point, I mean, she was much older and she
Mm-hmm.
was kind of on this last stretch of her life, and of course now she's passed on. But I would love, just because you have been um, such an integral part of
Yeah.
Tamalpa and such a staple of the Tamalpa faculty, and then also you, and hearing you talk about Anna, I would love if you would just kind of explain, share more about Anna.
Yeah. Yeah. How much time do we have?
Right, yeah.
So, you know, I'm smiling because just remembering Anna makes me smile
Mm,
big. She was amazing. She was a woman who loved life and art and dance and engaging with people. She was the most curious being I've ever met. And you were mentioning, the this part of, her history, related to cancer and the and dance and visualization. I'm gonna get there, but before that, for those who don't know much about Anna Halprin, she, is considered the, say the grandmother, the mother of dance for healing. It's a healing art. And back in the 50s, I would say, she started to question and redefine what is dance? Who is a dancer and who's not a dancer? What is art? Where can we dance? Where cannot we dance? And she said, we're all dancers and life is our stage. So she took out dance out of the theater and brought it to the street, into demonstrations, in a way, dance for everybody, right? She used to say, if you can breathe, you can dance. Dance is breath made visible. That's the title of an amazing piece of documentary from her, Breath Made Visible. And even, talking about the different range of movement that different people may have. Some of us think, oh, if I have to dance, I have to have this body and I have to have this movement. Dance, if I could just move my finger, this may be my dance. Right, and I'm feeling it and I'm connecting, and then my hand does this. So what was beautiful about Anna's work is, really coming back to what really dance and art is about, and kind of reclaiming what would say an indigenous way of connecting with art, with art and creativity. And she started to get really curious and wanted to keep exploring about the relationship between art and life, right? So she, in the 60s, 70s, there was a hub of collaboration, in her mountain home studio that was created by her husband, Lawrence Halprin, who was also an amazing, and talented human being, and an architect and an environmentalist. So he designed this dance deck for her, and there, all kinds of collaborators like Carl Rogers and Fritz Perls and all kinds of artists, musicians, poets joined Anna in this exploration about, that connection between creativity and art, right? And so that has been always at the heart of the, of Anna's work, and then what became the Tamalpa Institute, that was co-founded by Anna and her daughter Daria Halprin, who Daria was very interested in the psychological process, right? And she somehow put together, the curriculum that, that continues to the day. And along the way, as you were saying, a lot of life experiences happened, right? And one of those was the diagnosis with cancer. And Anna worked with it. She created this huge, portrait that, she painted with imageries of, she called it light and the shadow. It had two parts, right? One on the front and the other one at the back. And she created this portrait of self that then she invited her close friends and family to witness that dance and what she needed to express, which was, as she told before, connected to her life. And so she suspected was also connected with the cancer. And, part of her, her story is that, in that work that she did, she engaged, she started to feel better. So again, how art, how can we use, in a way, our life stories as inspiration, for our art, how our sadness, our fears, our passions can become the muse for my drawing, right, or for my dance. And then when I can engage with it, I can feel, I can express, right? I can sing, I can scream, I can move, right? I'm giving myself the possibility to, express what's inside of me. That sometimes maybe, expressing in symptoms, in physical symptoms, right? You know how it happens on a muscle level. We don't know, I'm stressed, all of a sudden, my shoulders are like that. But it also happens in our organs, right? It also happens, in our whole body that connects with our psychological process, right? Our feelings, our that are not processed, our emotional life. And at the same time, right, our physical body mirrors our psychological body. Our psychological body mirrors our our anatomy. So this mirror, these echoes that happened, and how we're able to connect with that through the arts is very much part, of the work of Anna Halprin. And just working with her, I had the honor to work a lot with Anna, and she was a friend, a mentor, a teacher. She was so curious about people and loved to see people move, all kinds of bodies, all kinds of backgrounds and multicultural backgrounds. And for her, right, talking about diversity, and the importance of diversity, she loved to see, you know, how people were bringing their unique ways of moving, right? And how to make that uniqueness of each person, this is who you are, right? So, you know, the theme of finding, for therapeutically, the importance of finding our voice or finding our style and being celebrated on that, right? And then learning, well, what is my movement, right? How can I reconnect with my body? Where do I finding blocks, places that I cannot access? How can I learn more about the anatomy of my body so that I can express or play this instrument?
Mm-hmm.
And I use this metaphor that I loved. And she used to say, our bodies, is like our own, it's like if we were a musician and this is our, musical instrument. But if it breaks, we cannot go and buy a new one. So we need to take care of our instrument.
Mm-hmm.
And if our bodies, is a piano, right? And I know how to play 5 notes. I can play a song, tan 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 tan. But 5 notes, the sudden start to feel limited. So the work is in a way to keep expanding my capacity to keep playing all the notes of my instrument so that I can play a more fully melody, so that I have more options, right? So that I can have more freedom of what to play. So that's how she saw the body in a way. So I free up my expression, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have more repertoire in
Mm-hmm.
ways that I can express myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Beautiful. Yeah. Oh, so many. So many. Um, Thank you for just relaying and sharing and expressing that. It's poetic in it, in how you kind of shared it, but it means so much to you. So I can feel the way you are very much this, and it's who you are, and also you tribute and honor Anna
Yeah.
and what she brought to you. And um, it reminded me of 17,000 different things all at once. But the one I was just thinking, yeah, very much this concept of like where all those colors allow you to have more range, to allow you to express more. And even in movement, I remember something very simple that's very different than what you're talking about, but the same heart in essence. Um, I had a contact lens, really bad vision problems, and I had a soft lens that kept falling out. 4 times a day, my contact lens would fall out, and been to like some of the top ophthalmologists, optometrists, and finally one said, "You need a scleral lens. It'll fit on your eye." Anyways, so simple. So I found my head movements and my
Yeah.
facial expressions become way more pronounced. And I then was able to, because of my ability to move more,
Yeah.
I could delve into the emotions that related
Mm-hmm.
to that. And then I had, when I overcame asthma and was able to move more and not be afraid of my chest constricting, and this was
Yeah.
just before my daughter was born, that led to me being able to run an ultra marathon, that led not just about can I accomplish that feat of miles and miles, it more allowed me to recognize the capacity of my body to move where I desired.
Yeah.
And when I could follow through with that desire, it allowed me to unlock so much emotionally
Mm-hmm.
and in a multifaceted
Yeah.
way, that when I look at how I felt, or the depth to which I felt before that, realized that was so shallow.
Yeah.
Um, and then I hope I will come across many more experiences that make me think right now is shallow, although I feel very deep about the felt experiences
Yeah.
that I have. Um,
Well, but and coming back to, you know, people that maybe are not into dance or movement, how this will translate. So, I was just thinking about posture, right? And if my posture that I tend to inhabit, we know that we all have patterns, right? It's a collapse, right? And all of a sudden, all these muscles that support, an extension, a hyperextension begins to get debilitated, right? And then if I'm not careful, and I live most of my life in a collapse, then the feelings that I'm accessing, that live in a collapse, and the lack of full breath, and you can even hear my voice when I go here, this softening, this collapse. And what would happen if someone who lives mostly here begins to practice and to reclaim a little bit of their hyperextension? There's a completely different constellation of feelings that live in hyperextension, right?
mhm,
It's very hard to feel full happiness, right, in a collapse. It lives here. Same on the opposite. If I'm stuck in here, it's very hard to access vulnerability,
mhm,
sadness, right? So it's not that one place is better than the other one. It's just that capacity to keep expanding the scale of places that I can inhabit in my body, my movement, right? So that I can, in a way, keep supporting the process of claiming all the rooms in the house.
mhm.
Some of those I need to go and do a deep cleaning. It happens to me all the time. You say, "Oh, I forgot this part of me," right? I need to pay attention to that. And we know how feelings live in the physical body. They're not floating around. Same with ideas or thoughts. They live in the body. The way that I hold myself, the way that I move, my posture impacts my physical, my feelings, and that impacts also the way that I think. So those moments, again, coming back to the beginning of bringing awareness, of paying attention to our bodies and their movement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to mention too, this is kind of a bridge to this, but it's very much a collaborative approach to expressive arts, to posture awareness, and those um I see that it's like I look at these things as like a very intra collaborative approach, like within yourself.
Yeah.
um but I know you mentioned, of course, I'm so glad you did, Lawrence Halprin, because he was a very somehow, as it goes, the small world of connections, 2 years before I stumbled across Anna Halprin's work, I stumbled across Lawrence Halprin's work. I didn't know they were related until 2 years later when I
Mm.
found Anna's. For my wife's birthdays, I usually had liked to plan something that would be in the theme of her flying. So I got a, you know, zip lining in Sonoma Canopy tours experience for both of us. And then I found this beautiful place at Sea Ranch, the Sea Ranch
Yeah.
Lodge.
Yes.
And so we had a travel blog at the time called Co-Muse Travels. Co-Muse is the word that I made that described when two people muse together and
Mm-hmm.
creates inspiration with one another. And that's very much my wife, Dawn, and I. So at that time, we had a travel blog. And so I reached out, and Sea Ranch and the person who ran it then said, "Happy to have you." And so we wrote about our experience. That meant I researched it. And when we
Yeah.
got there, I realized, wow, this person, Lawrence Halprin, was commissioned to architect the whole city of Sea
Yeah.
Ranch.
Yeah.
And then I read about how he very much brought on everybody to help design Sea Ranch.
Yeah.
And of course, when we were there, if anybody hasn't been to Sea Ranch, it's just beautiful. And, when you're on the ocean, on the beach, you look up, and he made it so that you don't see any cars, that
Yeah.
they're all hidden on the
Mm-hmm.
driveways and the carports.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
then I thought, so enamored with the way he views collaboration. Well, then wildly 2 years ago, when I found Anna Halprin's work, I thought, wait a minute, this reminds me of somebody. So then I looked it up and I realized, oh my gosh, this is the person whose husband
Yeah.
helped her design the floats in New York, right? To on Broadway, and just like design these floats where you would have dancers and um, you know, creators, and then they would be on these floats creating art
Yeah.
together. And so I just am amazed that these two people got to shape one another's lives. And then you're very much part of that world. And how I can't help but think, if people don't know, first of all, this Anna was somebody who took, I think I only know the parts that I've read about her and talked about with her and you and some others, but ballet, she took ballet from this strict, rigid art form to then saying, you don't need the dresses and the shoes. And she even went so far as to have the dancers go naked on Broadway. And I
Oh yeah.
remember there was an article that showed it, and then she was obviously got in trouble for all of that. But I mean, she was avant-garde and also she believed it's so worth expression
Yeah.
that we'll risk that because that's
Yeah.
a very small thing
Well,
to.
you know what, Neil? They both Lawrence and Anna loved nature and loved the environment and believed and lived in a way that saying we are nature. So for Anna, the naked body was just body and it was beautiful. And it wasn't about the perfect body, it was just the body. There is a beautiful documentary called Returning Home, in which Anna, at 80 years old, dances in different natural environments. And she's naked with, painted. It's a very artistic film, but it's a tribute to the aging body. So for her in the performance, it's about showing something that, it's just, is a body. And for Lawrence, as you were saying, the example of Sea Ranch and how you come to the coast and you don't see cars and you barely see the homes because they're part of, they're connected to the environment. For Lawrence, it wasn't just, okay, I'm gonna put a building here and it's about the building. It's a building in relationship with the environment, right? And in relationship with the people that are going to be using this building. So it is part of the community. The community needs to have a saying. There are trees, there are birds, there are deer, right, that are also part of the environment that will shape whatever is, going to be built there. He did also different designs for plazas or parks, and all, there is cannot remember, it will come to my mind, but there is a beautiful structure here in Portland that he created, that is this kind of water feature in the park, that are built in a way so that children and people can use and interact with the fountain. It's not just some pretty thing that I'm going to look at. It's part of the community, right? So for coming back to Anna, for Anna, nature, I'm looking now, all the trees are moving like crazy like this, because of the wind. Nature was another dance partner for her. So when she would work outside and she would look out the window, it's not just about me and my feelings and the person. It's also, that connection with the sky. When I connect with sky, how do I feel when I connect with earth, when I connect with tree? We know this now from eco-psychology, right? That speaks about the importance of nature for well-being. We know this from trauma theory, that we talk about regulating our nervous system. Why? Because this is our body too. So it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we all need that, a lot of that, with all the technology and social media. Um, just to look around and feel that connection, right, with the world around us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I know I thank you for your generous time in our
Yeah.
conversation, and the substance of it is really dense and wonderful. I want to ask you the question, kind of, and then directing people to how they can find you, of course. But I want to ask you the question, which is, we've talked about you and your work, and Anna, and I would love to talk about your personal legend, which is inspired from the theme of The Alchemist and Paulo Coelho, giving the old king in the book to talk to Santiago the shepherd, who's the protagonist. Um, and he says to this shepherd who's pursuing his dream and following his literal dream, but he said, the universe conspires in your favor when you are in pursuit of your personal legend.
Yeah.
And so personal legend can be kind of extrapolated to mean your destiny, your calling, the that which you are put on this planet to do. So I want to ask, as you've traveled in all the places that you have in terms of your practice and practices and your expertise, would you share your personal legend with us in what it is, and also how what are the ways that you keep
Yeah.
that vision in front of you?
Yeah. Thank you, Neil. It's a very profound question, right? But when I come in what feels in my heart and in my belly right now, I think that the calling that I have is to continue to engage, to commit, to find ways, to, studying from home, starting from here with my family, with the people that I like, with my 6-year-old son, with my husband, right? With my siblings, with my parents, with my friends, with my community, with the people that I work with, with, and keep finding ways to keep connecting to what matters to me, right? Keep finding ways, and the commitment to soften, to free up, um, to connect with depth. So I notice that when I start to get away, from my singing, my dance, my playing, my writing, my teaching even, I start to feel disconnected from myself, right? So for me, that especially in a world, right, that everything is so fast and so at the surface in many times, this Instagram and blah, 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 blah. For me, the practice is like, keep finding ways to deepen, to connect, to return home. And as I was saying before, it's not just my home, my home. My home is your home, is our home, is a home outside, is a planet, but it needs to connect here first, right? Because I notice that every time I go away from myself and I go out, I lose connection. So that's been my calling for a long time. I've been doing this work since I'm 20 years old. So it's just like I always say, it's the only thing I know, how to do right now. But it is connected to my practice. And then, when I'm working with others, I mean, that sense of reciprocity and how much I learn about myself and how much I feel alive when I'm working with people. eh, and learning about their stories and connecting, with their resources, expanding again the way in which we can be in this world. Because I want it to be really juicy. That's my wish, for my son, for all kids, and for everybody to keep finding that juice in life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
you're welcome.
Well, I want to know. Yeah, we'll have the information in the show notes, so everybody you can find that. But for those listening, watching, etc., how can they pursue learning more about you and finding you? What is the best places for people to come?
So I guess on Instagram, I share, pieces of my work, different exercises, inspiration, kind of a way to keep building community. You can also find me through my website, that is rosariosammartino.com. It's going to be all the information there. I'm going to teach workshops, classes that someone can come and do one class for a couple of hours and see how you feel. Longer workshops, specifically in working with trauma. If those, if there are therapies or people are interested in training, I will suggest that you check the Tamalpa Institute website, that you can also find it through my website. And yeah, those are ways to do it.
Well,
Yeah.
as somebody who's come through your workshop and felt
Mm-hmm.
the amazing freedom, and just somebody who could let these movers and dancers move for hours and then check in with us. And I remember when you said to me, "Ha- have you considered pursuing this work? I think it would be something for you." And I remember in that moment thinking, yes, I would so
Yeah.
love to. And then I knew I was meant to carry this other work of tongue tie and oral restrictions and having kids. And I thought, yeah. So um, I just strongly encourage anybody to, yeah, pursue finding out more with what Rosaria is speaking of. I mean, you don't need me to say it, but the wealth that she has, you've experienced now, of being able to hold space and bridge communications and connections, that I think it's so articulate the way you did that, and it's so deep and so felt. So it's amazing. So
Thank
I'm
you.
privileged to have this conversation with you, to be able to learn and share, and so happy that we got to do this. So thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Neil, and thank you for inviting me, for reconnecting. I'm also very happy to have had this conversation with you.
Mhm.
And and I guess another thing that I wanted to say is to remind people that you don't have to be an artist to do this,
Yeah.
or know how to dance, or know how to draw, and be a poet. It's really about wanting to connect with your creativity, and starting from there. So, because sometimes it's scary. It's like, oh my God, there's going to be all these dancers or all these,
Mhm.
artists. And really, it's not about that.
Yeah.
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 Well, I
Yeah.
hope to
Thank you.
see you soon, Neil, and your family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
If you
would look forward
travel
to
to
that.
Portland, or maybe, we find each other when I go and teach workshops in other parts.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
would love to stay in touch about that, and I
Yeah.
can't wait, yeah, to spend time in person together. And
Yeah.
I'm so thankful we've had this medium, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'll touch base soon because I can't wait for. I just feel like there was so many different conversations I wanted to sprinkle in there, but I'm really happy that we got to dive into
Yeah.
what we did. So yeah, well,
Wonderful.
thank you, Rosario.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, everybody listening, please comment, share how you felt. We want to hear more about it. Follow the podcast, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or Spotify or Apple, wherever it is.
Yeah.
Enjoy and reach out to Rosario on Instagram. What's your Instagram
Is
handle?
Rosario Sammartino,
Oh, perfect,
PhD, I think it is. Yeah.
perfect,
We'll have
perfect.
the information there.
Yes,
Yeah. Thank you,
yes,
everybody, for listening. Thank you
yeah.
so much.
This is major.
Thank you for listening to the Compromise to Alchemized podcast. Really excited to thank Jessica from Lunalux for the music, this track called Major. I want to thank Toshi, who originally did the design work for my cover art. And then I also want to thank Alyssa from my team for podcast publishing, and my whole team, including Kat, for heading up my world. And then also definitely want you all to follow me on YouTube, follow the podcast on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcast. Comment, give us a rating, and also follow me on Instagram at Dr. Neil Bulchandani so you can stay tuned to my latest. Thanks so much, and you have an amazing day.
This is major.